Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the IceCaps Weekly Wrap. I'm Amy Johnson, reporting for the AHL Report. Well, the IceCaps wrapped up their March road trip over the weekend, and what a week they had last week. It was an outstanding road trip overall. They went 4-2 on the 6-game road trip. 2 of those wins came in shutout fashion, and one of them was an overtime win. And so Sylvain Lefebvre and his team were pretty pleased with their overall efforts. So let's take a look and see what happened last week. For the week last week, the IceCaps kicked things off on Wednesday night with a visit to the Syracuse Crunch. Always a tough team for the IceCaps to play against, let's be honest, and things usually get pretty physical and pretty chippy, and this was no different on this particular evening. Discipline was a little lacking as things got very physical. There were plenty of roughing calls and fights that were happening, things of that nature, and the IceCaps found themselves on the penalty kill 7 different times in this game and allowed 3 power play goals against. So not a very disciplined game and not the best outing for the penalty killers. There were 2 IceCaps players who did manage to score a goal, Max Freeberg and Stefan Matteau. However, it just wasn't enough as the Crunch were really pushing the pace, and of course those power play goals weren't helping things either, and the Crunch were able to overcome the IceCaps 4-2 in this game. So that took them then to Friday night, where the IceCaps returned to Rochester for a rematch against the Americans, who they had just shut out 3-0 the Friday night previous to this particular game. They were looking to win in another spectacular fashion in Rochester, and it was an exciting game. They won this one 3-2. Jakob de la Rose had a goal in this one, as did the captain Max Freeberg for his second consecutive game, for his 10th goal of the season, and Bobby Farnham also scored in this game, and all of those goals came in the second period after the IceCaps found themselves down early in the first period, and they were able to keep the Amerks at bay in the third period and were able to win this one 3-2. It was a great bounce back win for the group after losing to Syracuse on Wednesday night. And so Saturday night, their final game of the road trip, brought them back to Syracuse to take on the Crunch one more time. And as Coach Lefebvre mentioned to us in Rochester on Friday night, now they needed to string a couple of wins together. And so not only were the IceCaps looking for points in the playoff push, but they also needed to get that confidence to get a couple of wins strung together. And they did so in exciting fashion on Saturday night. They were much more disciplined until the third period. The third period, there were a couple of bad penalties that the coach wasn't exactly pleased with. But overall, first and second period, they were fairly disciplined. The penalty kill did their job on this evening. Chris Terry scored the first goal of the night for the IceCaps. Jakob de la Rose had a goal for himself in his second consecutive game. This was a really nice goal. It was a shorthanded goal and set up by a really nice play by Josiah Didier, who found himself back in the lineup on this night. And Didier, in fact, got the assist on this shorthanded goal. And Charles Hudon scored the overtime winner thanks to a feed from Daniel Audette. And the IceCaps did manage to win this one in overtime 3-2. And it was a great way for them to wrap up the road trip and head back to St. John's and continue that playoff push as we're coming down to the final weeks of the regular season in the AHL. There were no transactions to speak of or to report on for last week, so we'll take a look at the week ahead for the IceCaps. They have a week to rest, regroup, practice, before the Rochester Americans now visit St. John's, and they come into Mile 1 Friday and Saturday night. Both of those games begin at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Newfoundland time. Of course, our AHL Report team will be live in Mile 1 on the Rock, reporting live for all the game updates as well as post-game interviews with Coach Sylvain Lefebvre. So be sure to follow along on Twitter at the AHL Report. Check us out on Instagram at AHL Report, and you can find full game recaps, previews, weekly forecasts, as well as videos that will be posted of interviews that we've done with players and the coach over the last week or so, and you can find those on our website, ahl.report. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll be here again with you next week for another edition of the IceCaps Weekly Wrap. I'm Amy Johnson.